At my parents' 35th anniversary party, my father slapped me so hard across the face that my diamond stud earring flew off and landed with a distinct ping in a crystal glass of champagne. The music stopped. The chatter of 30 guests died instantly. My brother-in-law Tyler stood there smirking. My sister Jasmine was fake crying into a napkin. And my mother looked at me with cold expectation. They thought violence would break me. They thought humiliating me in front of our pastor and community would force me to hand over the keys to my $3 million Tribeca penthouse. They were wrong. As I tasted the metallic tang of blood on my lip, I didn't scream. I didn't fight back. I simply walked out, pulled out my phone, and pressed a single button on my security app. 30 minutes later, they would learn that you do not bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand holds the deed to the roof over your head. Before I tell you how I legally evicted my entire family in under an hour, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to cut off toxic family members to save your own sanity. This is the story of how the black sheep became the wolf. My name is Sophia, and at 32 years old, I make my living cleaning up messes for the ultra-wealthy. As a crisis manager, I am the person billionaires call when they need a scandal to disappear. I am calm, I am logical, and I am ruthless when I need to be. But for my family, I was just the selfish daughter who worked too much and didn't visit enough. The afternoon started well enough. The backyard of my parents' colonial house in New Jersey was decorated with white lilies and gold ribbons. I had paid for the catering, the band, and the open bar, though of course my father Marcus took credit for all of it during his welcome toast. I stood by the mimosa station checking emails when the glass clinking started. Tyler, my sister's husband, stood on the small wooden stage. Tyler is a man who has failed at 4 different startups in 5 years, yet walks around with the unearned confidence of a Fortune 500 CEO. He wrapped his arm around my sister Jasmine. Jasmine is 28, beautiful, and has never held a job for longer than 6 months. She is the golden child, the fragile princess who always needs protecting. Family friends. Tyler announced, his voice booming. We have amazing news. Jasmine is pregnant with our second child. The crowd cheered. My mother Linda rushed up to hug them, tears streaming down her face. I clapped politely, sipping my sparkling water. I was happy for them truly, but I knew what was coming next. In my family, good news for Jasmine usually meant a bill for me. After the applause died down, Tyler cleared his throat again. With the baby coming, our 1-bedroom apartment is just going to be too tight. We need space. We need a sanctuary to raise this next generation properly. He locked eyes with me. A pit formed in my stomach. My mother walked over to me, guiding me toward the center of the patio, where everyone could see us. Sophia. Honey, she said, her voice dripping with that sugary tone she used when she wanted something. Your father and I have been talking. You have that massive penthouse in the city, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and it is just you. You are always traveling for work anyway. I stiffened. I knew exactly where this was going. We think it is only fair that you swap with your sister. She continued, as if suggesting we swap sandwiches at lunch. You can move back here into your old room or take their apartment. Let Jasmine and Tyler have the penthouse. They need the space for the family. You don't. The audacity took my breath away. My penthouse was not a gift. I bought it with money I earned working 80-hour weeks for a decade. It was my sanctuary. No, I said. The word was quiet but firm. Excuse me. My father stepped in, his chest puffed out. He had been drinking whiskey since noon. I said no. Dad, I am not giving my home to Jasmine. Tyler laughed, a dry, condescending sound. Come on, Sophia, don't be selfish. Think about the baby. You have all that empty space just sitting there collecting dust. It is immoral, really. We are just asking for a fair trade. We will even pay the utilities. He looked around at the guests, seeking validation. Several aunts and uncles nodded in agreement, murmuring about how family helps family. This was their tactic. Public pressure. They thought I would be too embarrassed to say no in front of the church elders. I am not moving. I repeated, my voice rising slightly. And Tyler, considering you still owe me $5,000 from your last investment scheme, I don't think you are in a position to discuss morality with me. Jasmine let out a sharp gasp and buried her face in Tyler's chest. Oh my God, she sobbed dramatically. I knew she would be jealous. She hates that I am happy. That was the trigger. My father stepped forward, his face turning a dark shade of red. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep. You apologize to your sister, he growled. You apologize right now, you ungrateful, arrogant little brat. I am the head of this family, and I say you will help your sister. I yanked my arm away. I am 32 years old, Dad. You don't tell me what to do, and you certainly don't tell me what to do with my property. That was when it happened. The slap was so fast I didn't see it coming. His heavy hand connected with my left cheek with a cracking sound that echoed off the brick walls of the house. The force of it knocked my head to the side. I felt the sharp sting as my diamond earring was ripped from my earlobe, flying into a nearby guest's drink. Silence descended on the party, absolute suffocating silence. My father stood there, breathing heavily, his hands still raised. Tyler was smirking, a look of pure satisfaction on his face. My mother didn't rush to see if I was okay. She rushed to my father, rubbing his back. Look what you made him do, she hissed at me. I slowly raised my hand to my cheek. It was throbbing. I tasted blood. I looked at the people I had supported for years. The parents whose mortgage I secretly paid because they were drowning in debt. The sister whose car note I covered. The brother-in-law whose ego I subsidized. I didn't cry. Tears are for people who are helpless. I was not helpless. I smoothed my dress. I looked my father dead in the eye. You just made the most expensive mistake of your life, Marcus, I said. I turned on my heel and walked toward the gate. Behind me I heard Tyler scoff. She's bluffing. She'll be back next week with a check. She always caves. I reached my car, sat in the driver's seat, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number of Olivia, my personal attorney and operations manager. She picked up on the first ring. Sophia. Is everything okay? Execute protocol, Omega. I said, my voice steady and cold. There was a pause. Olivia knew what that meant. We had drafted the paperwork 3 years ago when I first bought the deed to my parents' house through my shell company to save them from foreclosure. Protocol Omega was the nuclear option: immediate eviction, utilities cut, assets frozen. Are you sure? Olivia asked. Once we start this, there is no going back. The police will be notified to assist with the removal. I looked in the rearview mirror at the house. I could see them laughing on the patio, probably toasting to their victory. I am sure, I said. Burn it down. You have 30 minutes. The engine of my Range Rover hummed beneath me, a soothing vibration against the chaos I had just left behind. I drove 2 blocks down the street and pulled into the shadow of a large oak tree. I did not go home. Instead, I pulled out my tablet and opened the security app connected to the cameras I had installed at my parents' house 3 years ago. The screen flickered to life, showing the patio in high definition. They were laughing. That was the first thing that struck me. Less than 5 minutes after my father had struck me across the face, they had returned to their champagne and crab cakes. Tyler was miming the slap, recounting the moment to a group of my cousins who were shaking their heads in amusement. My mother was fixing her makeup in the reflection of the patio door, seemingly unbothered that her eldest daughter had just left with a bleeding lip. They truly believed I was powerless. They thought the house was theirs, the money was endless, and my dignity was a renewable resource they could harvest forever. Watching them, I felt the last tether of guilt snap. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. With 3 taps, I canceled the supplementary credit cards I had given my parents for emergencies. Then I transferred the operating funds from the household account back into my holding company. The financial umbilical cord was cut. On the screen, the atmosphere began to shift. The catering manager, a stern woman named Brenda, whom I had hired personally, approached my father with a card reader. The party was winding down, and the final balance was due. I watched my father pull out his platinum card, the one I paid off every month. He swiped it with a flourish, smiling at the guests. Brenda looked at the machine, then at my father. She shook her head. My father frowned, laughed nervously, and told her to try again. She did. Declined. I zoomed in on the video feed. I could see the sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. He pulled out another card. Declined. Then another. Tyler walked over looking annoyed that the service had stopped. He pulled out the card I had given Jasmine for baby expenses. Declined. The confusion was palpable. The music had stopped because the DJ was also asking for payment. The guests were whispering. This was the first crack in their facade. They were realizing that without me, they were not the aristocracy of the neighborhood. They were destitute. Then the cavalry arrived. I saw the headlights before I saw the cars. 3 black SUVs rolled up the driveway, followed by 2 police cruisers. My neighbors, who loved gossip almost as much as they loved property values, were peeking out of their windows. Olivia stepped out of the first SUV. She was a vision of corporate lethality in a sharp charcoal suit. Flanking her were 4 private security contractors, large men with impassive faces. Behind them, 2 uniformed officers approached the gate. My father stormed down the driveway to meet them, his chest puffed out, ready to bluster and intimidate. I could practically hear him shouting, asking who they were, and why they were interrupting his celebration. Olivia did not shout. She simply held up a document. Even through the camera, I knew exactly what it said. It was the deed to the property held by SB Holdings LLC and a copy of the lease agreement my parents had unknowingly signed years ago, disguised as tax paperwork. The guests began to scatter. There is nothing that clears a party faster than the police. My mother ran to the front, clutching her pearls, pointing at the officers. She was hysterical. Tyler was trying to record them with his phone, likely thinking he could spin this into a viral moment about harassment. One of the officers stepped forward and spoke to my father. I watched my father's posture collapse. The arrogance drained out of him like water from a cracked vase. He looked back at the house, then at Olivia. He began to argue, pointing his finger in her face. That was a mistake. One of the security guards stepped between them, pushing my father back firmly. Olivia checked her watch. She held up 5 fingers, then she pointed to the door. The eviction had begun. I switched the camera view to the living room as the family rushed inside. It was chaos. The security team entered with boxes and heavy-duty trash bags. Olivia stood in the center of the foyer, calm amidst the storm. She was directing the operation with surgical precision. Jasmine was screaming. She was running around the living room, grabbing things haphazardly. She tried to take the silver vase on the mantelpiece. A security guard gently but firmly took it from her hands and placed it back. It was listed in the inventory of the furnished rental agreement. It belonged to the company. It belonged to me. Tyler was shouting about squatters' rights and tenancy laws he clearly did not understand. Olivia handed him a piece of paper that silenced him. It was the police report I had filed 5 minutes ago regarding the assault. In our state, domestic violence against a landlord or property owner by a tenant is grounds for immediate lease termination and emergency removal. My father's slap had just cost them their roof. Then came the moment that defined their greed. Jasmine ran to the hallway closet where she kept her collection of designer bags. Most of them were gifts from me over the years, or so she thought. In reality, I had purchased them through the company as corporate gifts and let her use them. Technically, they were company assets. She grabbed a limited edition Birkin bag, clutching it to her chest like a shield. She tried to push past the security guard at the door. The guard blocked her path. He was a mountain of a man, and he did not look amused. He held out his hand. Jasmine shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face, screaming that it was hers, that she was pregnant, that they couldn't do this to her. Olivia stepped into the frame. She spoke to Jasmine. I imagined her saying, "Show me the receipt. If you can prove you purchased it, you can take it." Jasmine didn't have a receipt. She had never purchased anything of value in her life. She looked at Tyler, begging him to do something. Tyler, the man who had mocked me an hour ago, looked at the police officers and looked down at his shoes. He was a coward. Jasmine sobbed as the guard took the bag from her grasp. He dropped a black heavy-duty trash bag at her feet instead. "Fill this with your clothes," Olivia seemed to say. "You have 10 minutes left." The speed of the removal was terrifying and efficient. My parents tried to take the television. Denied. Company property. My mother tried to take the expensive artwork on the walls. Denied. Company property. They were stripped down to the essentials. Their clothes, their toiletries, and their personal documents. Everything else, the lifestyle they had flaunted, the symbols of status they used to belittle others, stayed. My father sat on the stairs for a moment, head in his hands. He looked old. For a second, a pang of pity struck my heart. But then I touched my swollen cheek. I remembered the years of emotional neglect, the way he looked at me with disdain while worshipping the ground Jasmine walked on. I remembered him stealing my college fund to pay for Tyler's failed business. The pity evaporated. "Time is up," Olivia signaled. The security team began escorting them out. It was not a dignified exit. My mother was wailing, being half carried by my father. Tyler was dragging 2 overstuffed trash bags, struggling to keep his pants up. Jasmine walked out empty-handed, refusing to carry her own bag, expecting someone else to do it for her. No one did. The front door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the feed. I heard the distinct sound of the electronic locks engaging. The security system armed itself. I switched the view back to the exterior camera. There they stood, the Brooks family, the pillars of the community, standing on the curb of the street surrounded by black trash bags. The streetlights flickered on, casting a harsh yellow glow on their defeat. The neighbors were now standing openly on their porches watching the spectacle. It started to rain. A light cold drizzle that soaked into their expensive party clothes. My father looked at the closed gate, then at his phone. He was likely trying to call me. I looked at my own phone as it lit up with his name. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. Then I blocked the number. I blocked my mother. I blocked Jasmine. I blocked Tyler. I put the car in gear. I did not look back as I drove past the end of the street. I saw them only as blurry figures in my peripheral vision, shrinking into the distance until they were nothing more than dark spots in the rearview mirror. They had wanted space. They had wanted the penthouse. They had wanted everything I had built without lifting a finger to help me. Now they had the entire world. They had all the space in the streets of New Jersey. I drove toward the city, toward the penthouse that was still mine, toward a silence that would finally be peaceful. But the war wasn't over. I knew them. Desperation makes people dangerous, and Tyler was already pulling out his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. They wouldn't go quietly. They would try to destroy my reputation since they couldn't take my property. Let them try. I had receipts for everything. The studio apartment Tyler called his entrepreneurial headquarters was actually a converted garage in a part of Jersey City that gentrification had not yet touched. It was a single room with a kitchenette that smelled permanently of stale beer and damp drywall. There was one window that looked out onto a brick wall and a bathroom door that didn't quite latch shut. This was where the Brooks family dynasty had come to die. I was not there to see them drag their black trash bags through the narrow hallway, but I didn't need to be. I knew exactly what that apartment looked like because I had paid the rent on it for 6 months when Tyler first claimed he needed an office for his non-existent consulting firm. Now 4 adults were crammed into 300 square feet of humidity and regret. According to the text messages my mother later sent me, in a drug-induced haze of self-pity, the first night was a masterclass in misery. Jasmine immediately claimed the only bed, a full-sized mattress on a frame that squeaked if you breathed too hard. She was pregnant, she reminded them, and the baby needed support. Tyler lay next to her, taking up more than his fair share of the space, scrolling furiously through his phone looking for legal loopholes that didn't exist. That left my parents, the people who had spent 30 years curating an image of upper-middle-class perfection, to divide the rest of the room. My father, Marcus, a man who refused to sit on chairs without cushions, was relegated to a sleeping bag on the hardwood floor. My mother took the love seat, a piece of furniture Tyler had likely found on the curb. It was stained, sagging, and smelled faintly of cat urine, though Tyler didn't own a cat. As the night wore on, the reality of their situation began to set in. The air conditioning unit in the window rattled like a dying engine, barely cutting through the stifling July heat. My mother shifted on the couch, a broken spring digging into her lower back. She must have been thinking about the guest room at my penthouse. I had furnished it specifically for her visits. I had bought 600 thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets and a mattress that cost more than Tyler's car. I had installed blackout curtains because I knew she suffered from migraines. I had done everything to make her comfortable, and she had repaid me by standing silent while my father struck me. Yet even as she lay there in the dark, sweating in her ruined party dress, her loyalty remained twisted. I learned later that she spent half the night rubbing Jasmine's back because my sister claimed to be having sympathy contractions from the stress. "Oh, my poor baby," my mother cooed, her voice raspy. "Don't worry, Sophia will come to her senses. She is just having a tantrum. She will be back tomorrow with an apology and a check. She can't leave us here. We are family." My father grunted from the floor. "She better, or I will take a belt to her like I should have done years ago." The sun rose, but it brought no relief. The single bathroom became the first battleground. My father spent 40 minutes in there, using up the entirety of the hot water tank trying to scrub the feeling of poverty off his skin. When Tyler finally got up, needing to use the facilities, he banged on the door. "Hurry up, old man," Tyler shouted. "This isn't the Ritz. Some of us have business to attend to." My father opened the door, steam billowing out, wrapped in a towel that was too small for him. "Watch your tone, son. I am still the patriarch of this family." Tyler laughed, and it was a cold, ugly sound. "Patriarch? You are a homeless man sleeping on my floor. You couldn't even control your own daughter. You let her humiliate us. You let her take everything. You are useless, Marcus." "Totally useless," my mother gasped from the kitchenette where she was trying to make instant coffee with tap water. "Tyler, don't speak to your father that way. He is under a lot of stress." "He is a failure," Tyler spat, grabbing a shirt from a pile on the floor. "And so are you, Linda. You guys strutted around like you owned the world, but it turns out Sophia owned you. And now, because you couldn't keep her on a leash, my pregnant wife is sleeping in a dump." Jasmine sat up in bed, eyes puffy. "Stop it, Tyler. It is not their fault. It is Sophia. She is the monster here. She planned this. She wanted to hurt us. She is jealous of us. She is jealous because we have love and she has nothing but money." That was the narrative they clung to. It was easier to paint me as the villain than to look in the mirror. They sat around that tiny, cluttered room eating stale donuts Tyler had bought from the corner store, feeding off each other's anger. The air grew thick with resentment. Every siren that wailed past the window, every drip of the leaky faucet, every cramp in my mother's back was my fault. My mother tried to call me again. I saw the notification on my blocked list. Then my father tried. Then Jasmine. They were getting desperate. The checkout time at the Fantasy Hotel was over and the bill was due. Around noon, Tyler stood up. He had a look in his eyes that I recognized. It was the same look he had when he pitched me his idea for a cryptocurrency based on prayer. It was the look of a con artist who had found a new angle. He looked around the squalid apartment. He looked at my mother looking disheveled and tragic on the torn sofa. He looked at Jasmine cradling her bump, tears streaming down her face. "This is it," Tyler whispered. "What is it?" Jasmine asked, wiping her nose. "This." Tyler gestured to the room. "The suffering, the injustice, the cruelty." He pulled a ring light out from under the bed. I didn't even know why he owned one, but he set it up with practiced efficiency. He clipped his phone into the holder and adjusted the angle so that the peeling paint on the wall was clearly visible in the background. "We don't need Sophia's money," Tyler announced, his voice trembling with a manic energy. "We have something better. We have a story." He looked at my mother. "Linda, sit there. Look sad. Don't fix your hair. We need people to see what she did to you. Jasmine, come here. Hold your stomach. Look at the camera and cry like you did when the police came." "What are you doing?" my father asked, squinting at the bright light. "I am taking back control," Tyler said, opening the TikTok app. "We are going to tell the world the truth. We are going to tell them how the rich, heartless corporate sister threw her elderly parents and her pregnant sister onto the streets. We are going to destroy her reputation, and then we are going to start a GoFundMe." He hit the record button. "Hey guys," Tyler said, his voice dropping an octave into a somber, serious tone. "I don't usually do this. I like to keep my family life private. But today I witnessed something so evil, so disgusting that I have to speak up. Please watch this until the end. We need your help." As he spoke, my mother slumped her shoulders, playing the part perfectly. Jasmine let out a fresh sob. They didn't know it yet, but they were digging their own graves. I was sitting in my office in Manhattan, monitoring the social media mentions for my name, waiting for the first strike. I knew Tyler. I knew he couldn't resist the spotlight. And I knew that in his rush to destroy me, he would make a mistake. He would lie. And lies were the one thing I could disprove with a single click. By the time I walked into my office at Sterling and Partners the next morning, Tyler's video had hit 2 million views. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. He had titled it "The Price of Greed: How My Billionaire Sister-in-Law Made Us Homeless." Of course, I am not a billionaire, but facts have never mattered to Tyler. I sat at my glass desk, looking out over the Manhattan skyline, and forced myself to watch it. He had used a grainy black and white filter to make their garage apartment look like a prison cell. He had edited the audio to increase the volume of my mother's sobbing while muting his own aggressive taunts. The video cut rapidly between shots of Jasmine holding her stomach in distress and photos of me on vacation in the Maldives, photos he had stolen from my private Instagram account. The narrative was simple and devastating. I was the villain, the disconnected corporate sellout who had abandoned her black roots to play dress-up with the white elite. He painted himself as the struggling, noble father trying to protect his family from my cruelty. He didn't mention the gambling debts. He didn't mention the assault. He didn't mention the 3 years of rent-free living I had provided. Then came the comments. In my line of work, we call them flying monkeys. They are the enablers, the people who rally around the narcissist to do their bidding. I scrolled through thousands of them, and for the first time since the slap, I felt a crack in my armor. A user named Auntie Clara 76, who I immediately recognized as my actual Aunt Clara, the woman whose insulin medication I had paid for last month, wrote, "This is what happens when you forget where you came from. Shame on you, Sophia. Your grandmother is rolling in her grave." Another comment from Deacon Jones First Baptist read, "We must pray for her soul. Money is the root of all evil. It is a sin to turn your back on your own blood." The internet strangers were even worse. They called me every name in the book. They called me a traitor to my race. They called me an uppity bourgeois witch. One comment with 5,000 likes said, "We should find out where she works and get her fired. People like this don't deserve power." They were doxing me. Someone had already posted the address of my firm in the replies. My assistant, a young woman named Sarah, who usually greeted me with a bright smile and a matcha latte, knocked on my door. She didn't come in. She just stood in the doorway looking pale. "Mr. Sterling wants to see you," Sarah whispered. "In the conference room. Now." My stomach dropped. Arthur Sterling was the managing partner of the firm. He didn't do casual meetings. He didn't do morning check-ins. If Arthur wanted to see you, it was because you had made the firm money, or you had cost the firm money. I grabbed my tablet and walked down the hallway. I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on me. Usually I walked these halls with authority. I was the top crisis manager on the East Coast. Today, I was the woman from that viral video. I heard whispers as I passed the break room. I saw people quickly switching tabs on their computers. They were watching it. They were watching my family destroy me. I entered the conference room. Arthur was standing at the window, his back to me. On the large presentation screen, Tyler's video was paused on a freeze frame of my face, a photo taken at a gala juxtaposed next to my mother sleeping on the dirty sofa. "Sit down," Sophia Arthur said without turning around. I sat. I kept my back straight. I folded my hands on the table. I would not let him see me sweat. Arthur turned. He was a man of few words, a terrifyingly efficient lawyer who valued reputation above all else. "We represent 3 Fortune 500 companies, 2 senators and a royal family," Arthur said, his voice dangerously calm. "Our clients trust us because we are invisible. We fix their problems. We do not become the problem." "It is a personal matter, Arthur," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It is a smear campaign by a disgruntled family member. It has no merit. It has merit if the public believes it." Arthur snapped, slamming his hand on the table. He pointed to the screen. "Our phones have been ringing off the hook for 2 hours. The PR team for the Kensington account just called. They are worried that associating with a firm that employs what did they call it? A familial abuser might damage their brand." "They are lying," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "My father assaulted me. They were squatting in my property. I have the police report. I have the deed." Arthur sighed, rubbing his temples. "In the court of law, evidence matters. In the court of public opinion, emotion matters. And right now you look like a monster, Sophia. You look like the kind of person who kicks a pregnant woman onto the street." He slid a file across the table toward me. "This is a formal complaint filed with HR by an anonymous source, likely one of the internet vigilantes your brother-in-law riled up. They are claiming you used company resources to harass your family. It is baseless, I know, but we have to investigate it." My heart hammered against my ribs. I had worked at Sterling and Partners for 7 years. I had built my entire identity around this job. It was my escape from my family. It was the one place where I was judged on my merit, not my uterus or my bank account. And now Tyler was taking this from me too. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. Arthur leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. "You are a crisis manager, Sophia. Manage this. I don't care who is right or wrong. I care about the bleeding. You have become a liability." He looked at his watch. "I am placing you on administrative leave effective immediately. However, I will give you a window. You have 48 hours to make this go away. I want a retraction. I want that video down. I want a public statement from your family clearing your name." "And if I can't get that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Arthur straightened his tie. "Then you are fired. We cannot have a partner who is more toxic than the clients we represent." 48 hours, Sophia. Fix it or clear out your desk." I received the call from Pastor Evans on a Tuesday afternoon just as I was finalizing a press release for a senator caught in a scandal. Pastor Evans had baptized me. He had presided over my high school graduation ceremony. In the tight-knit community of our church, his word was law, and to ignore a summons from him was social suicide. "Sophia," he said, his voice deep and rattling with practiced gravitas. "Your parents are hurting. The community is hurting. We need to heal this wound before it festers. Come to the Wednesday night service. We will have a family altar call. We will make this right." I knew exactly what that meant. A family altar call was not a mediation. It was a public execution disguised as prayer. It was a trap designed to use social pressure to force the wayward child back into submission. My parents had undoubtedly spun him a tale of woe, painting me as the prodigal daughter who had been corrupted by money and the secular world. I could have refused. I could have stayed in my penthouse and let them gossip. But Arthur's deadline was ticking. I had 36 hours left to save my career. I needed to confront the source of the poison, and I needed witnesses. I arrived at Greater Hope Baptist Church 10 minutes late. I wore a white suit, sharp and tailored looking, every bit the crisis manager I was. As I pushed open the heavy oak doors, the choir was humming a low, mournful tune. The sanctuary was packed. My parents, Jasmine and Tyler, were sitting in the front row, the seat of honor usually reserved for deacons and heavy tithe payers. As I walked down the center aisle, the air in the room shifted. Heads turned. I heard the whispers ripple through the pews like a wave. That is her. That is the one who kicked her pregnant sister out. Look at how she walks, so arrogant. I did not look down. I kept my eyes fixed on the cross hanging behind the pulpit. I walked straight to the front and stood near the altar a few feet away from my family. My mother was dabbing her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. My father refused to look at me, staring stoically ahead. Tyler, however, had his phone out, discreetly recording. He was hoping for a meltdown. He was hoping I would scream or curse so he could feed more content to his followers. Pastor Evans stepped down from the pulpit, microphone in hand. He placed a hand on my father's shoulder, then looked at me with a mixture of pity and sternness. "Church," he began, his voice booming without the need for amplification. "We are gathered here to witness the restoration of a family. The Bible tells us in Exodus 20:12, 'Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you.'" Amens echoed from the corners of the room. He turned to me. "Sophia, daughter, you have strayed. You have let worldly possessions harden your heart against your own flesh and blood. Your parents are suffering. Your sister is with child and without a home. God does not look kindly on those who hoard wealth while their family sleeps in squalor." He held the microphone out to me. The implication was clear. I was expected to take it, weep, apologize, and publicly promise to give them back the house. The congregation leaned forward, waiting for my submission. I took the microphone. The metal was cold in my hand. I looked at Pastor Evans, then at my parents, and finally turned to face the hundreds of people watching me. "Pastor," I said, my voice steady and clear, "you quote Exodus to me. It is a beautiful verse. But tell me, does the Bible not also say in Ephesians, 'Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger'?" A hush fell over the room. You could hear a pin drop. People did not talk back to the pastor. "And does it not say," I continued, my voice rising slightly, in 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 8, "Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." I turned to my father. "Marcus Brooks," I said, using his full name. "For 10 years, I have been the one providing for this household. Who paid off the mortgage when the bank was about to foreclose?" In 2014, my father's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. I did. I answered for him. "Who paid for the new roof last year?" I did. "Who paid for the car that Tyler drove here tonight?" I did. I turned back to the crowd. You see a poor elderly couple. I see two people who have received $4,000 a month in cash allowance from me for a decade. That is nearly $500,000. And where did it go? I reached into my purse and pulled out a stack of papers. I held them up. "It went to the Diamond Gyms Casino in Atlantic City." Gasps erupted from the pews. My mother stood up, her face pale. "Sophia, stop this," she hissed. "I will not stop," I said, stepping away from her reach. "These are the bank statements." While I was working 18-hour days, my father was gambling away my hard-earned money. And when he lost, he came to me for more. And when I finally said no, when I finally refused to let my sister take the roof over my head, he slapped me across the face. I pointed to the faint bruise still visible on my cheek. "Is that honor? Pastor, is assault honor? Is theft honor?" Tyler jumped up, shouting, "She is lying! Those papers are fake! She is trying to manipulate you all!" I looked at Tyler with pure disdain. "And you," I said, cutting him off. "The man who claims to be a protector. You are currently under investigation for credit card fraud. Do you want me to read the case number out loud right here in the house of God? Tyler shut his mouth instantly. He sat back down looking terrified. The congregation was in chaos. The older ladies were fanning themselves. The deacons were murmuring. Pastor Evans looked paralyzed, caught between his allegiance to my parents and the undeniable evidence I was waving in the air. I turned back to my parents. They looked small now. The facade of the victim had crumbled, revealing the ugly truth of their entitlement. I came here tonight because you wanted a public resolution, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. So here it is. I looked directly into the camera of the church live stream, knowing that my boss and the internet were watching. Mom, Dad, since you have accused me of being a terrible daughter for not supporting you, I am going to grant your wish. I am going to stop trying to buy your love. Effective immediately, I am canceling the platinum health insurance policy I have paid for since you retired. My mother let out a genuine scream of terror. Her diabetes medication cost hundreds of dollars a month without that insurance. I am also canceling the monthly stipend, I continued, relentless. And as for the car, it is leased in my name. The repossession team is already on their way to the parking lot. You might want to get your Bibles out of the glove compartment before they tow it. Sophia, please, my father croaked, his voice cracking. We are your parents. Then act like it, I whispered loud enough for the microphone to catch. I handed the microphone back to a stunned Pastor Evans. God may forgive you, I said, but my bank account does not. I turned and walked down the aisle. The silence that followed me was different this time. It wasn't the silence of judgment. It was the silence of shock. I kept my head high, listening to the sound of my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew that behind me the kingdom of lies my family had built was burning to the ground, and I had been the one to strike the match. As I pushed open the doors to the cool night air, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Olivia. You need to see what Tyler just posted, it read. He is not backing down. He just escalated it to a federal level. I stared at the screen. I had just cut off their lifeline, and yet like a cornered animal, Tyler was still trying to bite. I took a deep breath. If he wanted a federal war, I would give him a nuclear winter. The text from Olivia regarding Tyler's federal escalation was disturbing, but it was not surprising. A narcissist, when cornered, does not surrender. He burns the village down. Tyler was claiming that my eviction was a violation of the Fair Housing Act, and that I had discriminated against him based on his familial status. It was a frivolous lawsuit, one that would get thrown out of court eventually, but the goal wasn't to win. The goal was to tie up my assets and ruin my reputation long enough for him to squeeze a settlement out of me. He wanted a war. I decided to give him an autopsy. I did not go home after the church service. Instead, I drove into the city to a nondescript office building in Midtown that housed the firm of Vance and Associates. Vance was a former FBI forensic accountant who had pivoted to private investigation. He was the man you hired when you wanted to know where the bodies were buried and exactly how much the shovel cost. I had retained Vance 3 days ago, the moment Tyler posted that first video. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know who Tyler really was, beyond the buzzwords and the failed startups. Vance was waiting for me in his conference room. The lights were dim, and the smell of stale coffee hung in the air. He didn't offer me a drink. He simply pointed to a thick file on the mahogany table. You are not going to like this, Sophia, Vance said, his voice gravelly and devoid of emotion. But you are going to be able to use it. I sat down and opened the file. The first page was a summary of Tyler's so-called business empire. Tyler claimed to be the CEO of Infinite Horizons Consulting, a firm that specialized in cryptocurrency and blockchain solutions for minority-owned businesses. It is a shell, Vance explained as I scanned the documents. There are no clients, no revenue. The office address is a UPS store in Queens. The only money moving through those accounts is coming from one source. Vance pointed to a flowchart. I traced the line with my finger. The money went from my personal account to my father's account as his monthly allowance. From there, it was transferred to Jasmine. And from Jasmine, It was funneled directly into infinite horizons. He is laundering my own money back to himself, I whispered. It gets worse, Vance said. Look at the expenditures. I flipped the page. I expected to see gambling debts, perhaps illicit substances, or maybe just bad investments in worthless crypto coins. What I saw instead made my stomach turn. Rent payments for a luxury apartment in Soho, tuition for acting classes, dinners at Nobu, weekends in the Hamptons. Who is this for? I asked. Jasmine and Tyler live in a garage. Vance pulled out a stack of photographs. Meet Kayla, he said. I stared at the glossy prints. Kayla was a 22-year-old fitness influencer. She was white blonde and strikingly beautiful in a generic Instagram-ready way. The photos showed her and Tyler walking hand in hand through Central Park. They showed them kissing at a rooftop bar. They showed Tyler lifting her up, laughing, looking like a man without a care in the world. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Tyler, the man who had stood on a stage and lectured me about abandoning my black roots, the man who accused me of trying to be white, was funding a secret life with a white mistress, using his black wife's money. I looked at the dates on the photos. One of them, dated 3 months ago, showed Tyler and Kayla looking at engagement rings. He is planning to leave her, I realized. He is waiting for the baby to be born, waiting to get a settlement from me, and then he is going to leave Jasmine and the kids. Keep looking, Vance said. The last page. I turned to the final document. It was a credit card statement. The card was a supplementary American Express issued to Jasmine, intended for emergency baby expenses. I had paid off the balance on this card every month for years without looking too closely at the details, trusting my sister. There was a charge from last week, the day before the anniversary party, the day before he stood in my parents' backyard and called me selfish. Hermes of Paris, Madison Avenue. $32,000. My breath hitched. I looked at the item description. A Birkin 25 in Togo leather. Jasmine has been begging for a designer bag for 5 years, I said, my voice shaking with rage. I refused to buy her one because I told her she needed to save money. She didn't get the bag, Sophia, Vance said gently. Look at Kayla's Instagram. He slid his tablet across the table. There she was. Kayla, posing in front of a mirror holding the orange box. The caption read, "My baby treats me like a queen. # spoiled, # love him." I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Tyler had taken the card I paid for, the card meant for his unborn child's diapers and formula, and used it to buy a $30,000 bag for his mistress. And then he had gone home to his pregnant wife, dragged her to my parents' party, and demanded she help him steal my penthouse. Jasmine was not just his victim, she was his piggy bank, and he was breaking her open piece by piece. Can I release this? I asked Vance. Can I put this on the internet right now? It would destroy him. The Black Twitter community would eat him alive. His narrative of being a pro-Black victim would evaporate in seconds. Vance shook his head. You could, but he would just claim the photos were doctored. He would claim it was a business relationship. He is a liar, Sophia. Liars always have an explanation. And if you release this now, he goes underground. He hides the money. He destroys the paper trail. I closed the file. Vance was right. Humiliation was not enough. I needed incarceration. I needed Tyler to be so desperate, so cornered, that he would make a mistake that couldn't be explained away. I need him to commit a felony, I said. A real one. One that I can catch on camera. He is running out of cash, Vance noted. You cut off the parents. You cut off the credit cards. He can't pay the rent on Kayla's apartment next month. He can't keep up the charade. He is going to get desperate. I nodded. I knew Tyler. He was arrogant, but he was also lazy. He wouldn't go out and get a job. He would try to take what he felt he was owed. I stood up, taking the file with me. Thank you, Vance. Keep watching him. I have a feeling he is going to pay me a visit soon. I walked out of the office and into the bustling city night. The lights of Times Square flickered in the distance. I clutched the file to my chest. It was heavy, weighted with the destruction of my sister's marriage. Part of me wanted to run to Jasmine to shake her to show her who her husband really was. But I knew she wouldn't believe me. She was too deep in the fog. She would think I forged the documents to hurt her. No, she had to see it for herself. She had to see him fall. I hailed a cab and gave the driver the address of my penthouse. As I sat in the back seat, I pulled out my phone. I had one more move to make. I opened my banking app and unlocked a specific notification setting on the digital smart lock of my apartment. I knew Tyler still had the stolen key. I knew he thought I didn't know about it. And I knew that with his mistress demanding rent and his wife demanding food, he would remember the wall safe in my guest bedroom where I used to keep petty cash. "Come on, Tyler," I whispered to the empty cab. "Come and get it." I knew he was coming before he even stepped foot in the lobby. Desperation has a specific scent, and Tyler had been reeking of it for days. My hunch was confirmed at exactly 2:14 in the morning when my phone vibrated on the nightstand of my hotel room. It was a notification from my Penthouse smart home system. Guest access key used. Service elevator. I sat up in bed, the silk sheets pooling around my waist, and reached for my iPad. I didn't feel fear. I felt the cold satisfaction of a hunter watching a trap snap shut. I had purposely not changed the locks after the eviction. I knew Tyler had stolen my mother's emergency key months ago. I had seen it missing from her keychain during a Sunday dinner, but never mentioned it saving the information for a rainy day. Well, it was pouring now. I opened the camera feed. The screen illuminated the dark room, showing the interior of my Tribeca sanctuary in grainy night vision. The elevator doors slid open silently. Tyler stepped out. He was dressed in a black hoodie and dark jeans, looking like a caricature of a cat burglar. He pulled a flashlight from his pocket, the beam cutting through the darkness, dancing over my white Italian leather sofas and the abstract sculptures he used to make fun of. He moved with a frantic, jittery energy. He wasn't there to vandalism, he was there to hunt, He needed money for his mistress, and he needed leverage against me. I watched as he bypassed the expensive electronics in the living room. He knew I had serial numbers for all of them. He was heading straight for the home office. My heart rate remained steady as I watched him kick open the door to my workspace. He went straight to my desk, rifling through the drawers. He was looking for files. Maybe he thought I kept the original deed to the house there, or maybe he was looking for client secrets he could sell to the tabloids. He threw papers onto the floor, frustrated. He wouldn't find anything. I had digitized my entire life 5 years ago. The only thing in those drawers were old takeout menus and blank stationery. He cursed, his voice tinny through the microphone. "Where is it? Where is the cash?" He slammed the drawer shut and turned his attention to the master bedroom. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. In my master suite, there is a large walk-in closet connected to a bathroom that rivals most spas. Inside that closet, hidden behind a false panel that Tyler had seen me use once years ago, was a wall safe. He thought it contained cash and jewelry. In reality, it was currently empty, but he didn't know that. I watched him enter the bedroom. He moved quickly to the closet, finding the panel with surprising memory. He punched in a code. Wrong. He tried again. Wrong. He pulled a crowbar from his waistband. He was going to try to pry it out of the wall. He was committing a felony. Burglary with possession of burglary tools. Attempted grand larceny. The charges were stacking up like poker chips. But I wasn't ready to call the police yet. I wanted him to feel the walls closing in. I wanted him to understand that he was not in control. He gave up on the safe after 5 minutes of futile scratching at the reinforced steel. He was sweating now, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. He turned around and saw the jewelry box on my vanity. He dumped it into his backpack. It contained only costume jewelry I used for styling worthless baubles, but the intent to steal was now captured in 4K resolution. Then he made his mistake. He needed to use the bathroom. Nerves will do that to a man. He walked into the master bathroom. It is a room I designed myself, enclosed entirely in smart glass. With the touch of a button, the clear glass walls turn opaque for privacy. It also has a heavy soundproof glass door that locks magnetically. I waited until he was fully inside, standing by the sink, splashing water on his face to calm down. I opened the control app on my iPad. I pressed the button labeled Lockdown Mode Zone 4. On the screen, I saw the heavy glass door slide shut and lock with a mechanical thud. Tyler spun around, startled. He ran to the door and pulled on the handle. It didn't budge. Then I pressed the second button. Privacy mode. The glass walls of the bathroom instantly turned a milky, solid white. Tyler disappeared from view on the external cameras, but the camera inside the bathroom was still recording. I switched feeds. He was trapped in a white glass box. He started banging on the door. "Open up, Sophia. I know you did this. Open this door." I didn't answer. I didn't turn on the intercom. I let the silence of the penthouse answer him. He was trapped in a soundproof cage in an empty apartment on the 40th floor. No one could hear him scream. He threw his shoulder against the glass. It was reinforced bullet-resistant material meant to withstand hurricane winds. He wasn't getting out. I watched him slide down the wall, defeated. He pulled out his phone. He had signal barely. I could have jammed it, but I wanted to see who he would call. I expected him to call 911 to claim he was trapped, maybe make up a lie about why he was there. He didn't call the police. He couldn't. He had a backpack full of stolen goods and a crowbar. He dialed a number. I saw the name on his screen as he held the phone up. It wasn't Kayla. It was Jasmine. I turned up the volume on the feed. "Baby," he whispered, his voice trembling. I heard Jasmine's voice, sleepy and irritated, coming through the speaker. "Tyler. Where are you? It is 3 in the morning. The baby is kicking and I need water." I am at a meeting," Tyler stammered. "A late-night investor meeting, with the partners from Tokyo. The time zones, you know." He was lying to his pregnant wife while trapped in a glass box during a burglary. The depths of his cowardice were truly bottomless. "A meeting?" Jasmine asked, suspicious. "In the middle of the night, Tyler. Are you with a woman?" No, Jasmine." "I swear," Tyler said, looking around his prison frantically. "Look, I might be late coming home. The negotiations are going long. They are very intense." He was trying to buy time. He thought he could figure a way out. He thought he could hack the lock or break the glass before morning. "Don't wait up," he said. "I am doing this for us, baby. I am going to bring home a big check. I promise." He hung up. He put his head in his hands and started to cry. I watched him for a moment longer. A man who had built a life on lies, now physically imprisoned by them. He had no idea that the police were not my next call. My next call was to Vance. I needed the footage of this lie. I needed Jasmine to hear him prioritize his ego over her reality one last time. He thought he was at a meeting, fine. I would make sure he had a meeting. A meeting with the consequences of his own actions. I closed the iPad and laid back on the pillows. I would let him sit there for a few hours. Let the sun come up. Let him stew in the terror of being caught. The police could wait until morning. After all, I wanted to make sure the lighting was perfect for his mugshot. While Tyler was undergoing his silent mental breakdown in my glass-walled bathroom, a different kind of violence was erupting back in the studio apartment from hell. I learned the details of this night weeks later through a combination of police reports filed by the neighbors and the sobbing, broken confession of my mother. But in my mind, I can see it as clearly as if I were watching it on a 4K monitor. The heat in that garage was oppressive, a sticky, suffocating warmth that smelled of stale sweat and desperation. It was 3 in the morning, and while I slept in my hotel room, my mother Linda was awake, huddled over a hot plate, trying to boil pasta for her pregnant daughter. Jasmine had woken up hungry. Not just hungry, but ravenous and angry. The stress of the eviction and the sudden drop in her standard of living had stripped away her mask of sweetness. The golden child, the fragile princess who needed protecting, was revealing the teeth beneath the smile. She sat on the edge of the squeaky mattress, wrapped in a sheet that was turning gray from the dust in the room, watching our mother struggle with a pot of lukewarm water. "Is it done yet?" Jasmine snapped, her voice cutting through the humid air. "I am starving, Mom. My blood sugar is dropping. Do you want your grandchild to pass out?" "I am trying, baby." Linda whispered, her hands shaking as she stirred the pasta. "The burner is slow. Just give me 5 more minutes." 5 minutes? Jasmine scoffed, throwing her head back. "It has been 20. God, you are useless. Sophia would have had a chef here by now. Sophia would have ordered Uber Eats. But we are stuck here eating boiled noodles because you and Dad couldn't handle one ungrateful daughter." My mother froze. She turned slowly to look at her favorite child, the child she had coddled, the child she had chosen over me every single time. "We are in this mess because we tried to help you, Jasmine," my mother said, her voice trembling with hurt. "We fought for you. Your father slapped his own daughter for you. And look where that got us." Jasmine spat back, standing up. She waddled toward the kitchenette, her face twisted in a sneer that looked disturbingly like Tyler's. "You didn't fight hard enough. You let her walk all over you. You are weak, Mom. You have always been weak. That is why Sophia runs the family. That is why she has the money. Because she is a shark and you are just nothing." The words hit my mother harder than any physical blow. She had spent her entire life building her identity around being a good mother, a nurturing figure. To hear her masterpiece, her beloved Jasmine, call her nothing was a spiritual evisceration. "I am your mother," Linda said, tears welling up in her tired eyes. "I wiped your tears. I paid for your dance lessons. I took care of you when Tyler was out with his friends. How can you speak to me like that?" "Because I am hungry," Jasmine screamed, picking up a plastic cup and throwing it against the wall. It cracked, sending water splashing onto my father's sleeping bag. My father stirred on the floor. He groaned, rolling over, trying to block out the noise. He didn't get up. He didn't defend his wife. He just wanted to sleep. Jasmine marched up to the hot plate. She looked into the pot of cloudy, half-cooked pasta. "This looks like garbage," she said. "I can't eat this." "It is all we have," Linda pleaded, reaching out to touch Jasmine's arm. "Please, baby, just eat a little bit. We will figure something out tomorrow. Tyler said he is bringing a check." "Tyler is a liar," Jasmine hissed. And then she did something that crossed the line of no return. She shoved our mother. It wasn't a gentle push. It was a hard, violent shove with both hands against my mother's chest. Linda, frail from stress and lack of sleep, stumbled backward. Her foot caught on the edge of the rug, and she fell hard onto the concrete floor. Her hip hit the ground with a sickening thud. The pot of pasta tipped over, splashing hot water and noodles across the floor, narrowly missing her legs. Linda gasped, clutching her hip, staring up at her daughter in absolute horror. She wasn't crying from the pain. She was crying from the shock. The baby she had carried, the girl she had protected from every hardship, had just assaulted her over a bowl of noodles. "Look what you made me do," Jasmine shouted, not checking to see if our mother was injured. "Now there is no food. Now I am going to starve." My father finally sat up. He rubbed his eyes, looking at his wife on the floor and his daughter screaming. A real man, a real husband, would have stood up and protected his wife. He would have checked on her. He would have disciplined his child, pregnant or not. But Marcus Brooks was not a real man. He was a narcissist who only cared about the path of least resistance. "Linda, what is wrong with you?" my father barked, looking at the mess on the floor. "Look at what you did. You upset the girl. You know she is hormonal. Can't you even cook a simple meal without causing a disaster?" My mother looked at him. For 35 years she had cooked his meals, washed his clothes, and stroked his ego. She had believed his lies. She had supported his authority. And now, lying on a dirty floor with a bruised hip, she waited for him to help her up. "Get up and clean this mess," Marcus grumbled, lying back down and pulling the blanket over his head. "And Jasmine, honey, stop screaming. It is bad for the baby. Your mother will fix it. She always fixes it." Jasmine stepped over our mother as if she were a pile of laundry. She went to the bed, grabbed a bag of chips she had been hiding, and started eating aggressively, staring at the wall. My mother lay there for a long time. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the sound of Jasmine crunching chips and my father's snoring. She realized then with a clarity that must have been blinding that she was alone. She had no husband. She had no golden child. She had two parasites who saw her only as a servant. Slowly, painfully, Linda dragged herself up. She didn't clean the pasta. She didn't say a word. She limped to the bathroom and locked the door. She sat on the closed toilet seat, shivering in the dark. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock the screen. She scrolled past my father's name. She scrolled past Tyler's name. She scrolled past Jasmine's name. She stopped at mine. Sophia. The daughter she had slapped. The daughter she had betrayed. The daughter she had called selfish. The daughter who was the only person in the entire family who had ever actually taken care of her. It was 2:14 in the morning. My phone lit up on the nightstand in my hotel room. I was awake watching Tyler on the camera feed, but I didn't look at my phone right away. When I finally picked it up, I saw the name on the screen. Mom. I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the answer button. I could imagine her voice. I could imagine the apology, or maybe just the begging. I could imagine her asking for money for a hotel room, for a way out of the hell she had helped build. But then I remembered the slap. I remembered her standing on the patio telling me to apologize to the sister who had just shoved her. I remembered 10 years of neglect. I let it ring. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3 rings. I turned the phone over, placing it face down on the table. The buzzing stopped. The room went silent again. I looked back at the iPad at Tyler trapped in his glass cage. Not tonight, Linda, I whispered to the dark room. You made your bed. Now you have to sleep on the floor next to it. The sun had barely risen over the Hudson River when I released Tyler from his glass prison. I did not speak to him as the door hissed open. I simply unlocked it remotely from my bedroom, watching on the monitor as he stumbled out, stiff, humiliated, and reeking of fear. He didn't loot the place. He didn't threaten me. He ran. He scrambled to the elevator like a rat fleeing a sinking ship, clutching his backpack of stolen costume jewelry. He thought he had escaped. He thought his nightmare was over. He had no idea that I had just opened the door so he could walk straight into the slaughterhouse. 2 hours later, I made the call that would seal their fate. I called my father. I made sure my voice trembled. I made sure I sounded like a woman on the edge of a nervous breakdown. I told him that the internet mob was too much, that my boss was threatening to fire me, and that I couldn't handle the pressure anymore. I told him I wanted to settle. I told him I wanted peace. The victory in his voice was immediate and sickening. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't apologize for the slap. He just said, I knew you would come to your senses, Sophia. We will meet you at your lawyer's office at noon. Bring the checkbook. They arrived at the offices of Sterling and Partners, looking like an entourage of conquering warlords. Despite spending the last few nights in a squalid garage, they had managed to make themselves presentable, though the strain was visible in the tight lines around my mother's mouth and the way Jasmine kept shifting her weight. Tyler, incredibly, was wearing a suit. It was ill-fitting and shiny in the wrong places, but he wore it with the arrogance of a man who believed he had won a game of 4D chess. I sat at the head of the long mahogany conference table. Olivia sat to my right, her face a mask of professional neutrality. I had briefed her on the plan. She knew that every document we were about to present was a landmine disguised as an olive branch. My father took the seat at the opposite end of the table, asserting his dominance. Tyler and Jasmine sat on either side of him, flanked by my mother. They looked at me not with relief that the family feud was ending, but with the hunger of wolves circling a wounded deer. I am glad we could all be here, my father began, lacing his fingers together. This has been a very difficult time for the family. You have caused us a lot of pain, Sophia. A lot of embarrassment. I looked down at my hands, feigning shame. I know, Dad. I am sorry. I just want to fix it. I have prepared a settlement agreement. I nodded to Olivia. She slid a thick stack of documents across the polished table. This agreement outlines a comprehensive support package, Olivia explained, her voice crisp. It includes the reinstatement of the monthly stipend, the return of the leased vehicle, and a lump sum payment of $50,000 to cover your relocation expenses back into the family home. I watched them read it. I waited for the nod of acceptance. $50,000 was a fortune to them right now. It was enough to get them out of debt. It was a lifeline. But I had underestimated the depths of their greed. Tyler slammed the paperwork down on the table. "This is a joke," he scoffed. 50,000. Do you know what you did to my reputation? Do you know the emotional distress you caused my pregnant wife? Jasmine chimed in, rubbing her belly theatrically. I have been having palpitations, Sophia. The doctor says the stress could affect the baby's development. We need security. We need guarantees. My father leaned back, crossing his arms. Tyler is right. This is crumbs. You are a partner at this firm. You have a penthouse. You have millions tucked away. And you offer us 50,000. It is an insult. I looked up, making my eyes wide with panic. What do you want then? Please just tell me. I can't lose my job. I need this to go away today. Tyler exchanged a look with my father. It was a look of pure predatory delight. They smelled blood in the water. We want $2 million in cash, Tyler said, leaning forward. Tax-free, for pain and suffering. And the penthouse, Jasmine added quickly. We want the deed to the penthouse, the Tribeca one. You can move into a smaller place. You are single. You don't need all that room. We need it for the nursery. And my father added, his voice dropping to a gravelly demand. I want 50% of your shares in SB Holdings. I want to be a silent partner. I want to make sure you never cut us off again. I want control, Sophia. The room went silent. Olivia stiffened beside me. These demands were insane. They were extortionate. They were asking for nearly everything I had built over a decade. I looked at them. I looked at the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. They didn't want to be my family. They wanted to be my parasites. They wanted to consume me whole until there was nothing left but a husk. Is that all? I asked quietly. That is the price of our forgiveness, my father said. Take it or leave it. And if you leave it, Tyler posts another video, and we go to the press. And you lose your job anyway. It was the perfect setup. They were so blinded by the prospect of immediate wealth that they didn't ask why I would agree to such madness. I took a deep breath, letting a single fake tear roll down my cheek. Okay, I whispered. Sophia Olivia interjected, playing her part perfectly. You cannot be serious. This is financial suicide. I have no choice, Olivia, I said, my voice cracking. They are my family. Just draw up the papers. We spent the next hour drafting the new agreement. This was the trap. To legally transfer the shares of my holding company and to justify a $2 million payout without triggering a gift tax audit, they had to be listed as legitimate business partners. I need you to sign these affidavits, Olivia said, sliding the new documents over. Since you are demanding shares in the company and a payout based on business valuation, you must attest that you have been active consultants for SB Holdings for the past 5 years. You must attest that the money you received previously was salary, not gifts. And Tyler, you must list your assets to show you are a qualified investor for the transfer of the deed. They didn't read the fine print. They didn't ask what qualified investor meant. They didn't realize that by signing these papers, they were admitting that the money I had given them over the years was taxable income they had never reported to the IRS. They were admitting to tax evasion in writing. And Tyler, in his haste to claim the penthouse, filled out a financial statement claiming he had assets he didn't possess, which was bank fraud. They signed everything. My father signed with a flourish, his signature large and looping. Jasmine signed with a little heart over the I in her name. Tyler signed with a smirk, winking at me as he capped the pen. There, Tyler said, tossing the pen onto the table. That wasn't so hard, was it? I looked at the stack of signed documents. They were no longer just a family of leeches. They were now a family of felons, and I held the confession. "We will process the transfer of funds within 48 hours," I said, standing up. My legs felt steady. My heart was cold. My father stood up and buttoned his jacket. "Good. We will expect the keys to the penthouse by Friday. Come on, Linda. Let's go celebrate. I feel like a steak dinner." My mother looked at me. For a second, I saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. Maybe she sensed that it was too easy. Maybe she realized that she had just extorted her daughter. But then she looked at Jasmine, who was beaming, and the moment passed. "We are going to Del Frisco's," Jasmine announced. "You are paying, right, Sophia? I mean, since it is our company now." I managed a weak smile. "Put it on the corporate card." They walked out of the conference room, their laughter echoing down the hallway. I watched them go. I watched my father clap Tyler on the back. I watched my mother link arms with Jasmine. They looked like winners. They looked like they had just pulled off the heist of the century. When the elevator doors closed, the silence returned to the room. I sat back down and looked at Olivia. She was already scanning the signed affidavits into her computer. "We have them," Olivia said softly. "Tax evasion, perjury, bank fraud, and extortion." I picked up the pen Tyler had used. It was still warm. "Send the file to the IRS," I said, my voice returning to its normal steely cadence. "And send a copy to the district attorney. But wait until they order the appetizers. I want them to at least taste the victory before I choke them with it." Olivia typed a command on her keyboard. "Done," she said. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. I could see them exiting the building, hailing a cab. They were heading to a steakhouse to celebrate spending money they didn't have, based on a contract that was a prison sentence in disguise. 48 hours, I whispered. "Enjoy your steak, Dad. It is going to be your last good meal for a very long time." The 48 hours following the signing of the settlement agreement were the longest of my life. Not because I was anxious, but because I was waiting for a fish to swim into a net I had meticulously repaired. My father and Jasmine were busy planning their new lives, sending me links to furniture they wanted me to buy for the penthouse and asking if the building had a concierge to handle their dry cleaning. They were drunk on the promise of future millions, completely unaware that the money transfer they were waiting for was being held up by a very specific, very legal bureaucratic hurdle I had engineered. It was a clause buried deep in the addendum of the property transfer agreement, listed under Section 14 subsection C, titled Solvency and Maintenance Assurance. In New York City, real estate, especially in a building as exclusive as my Tribeca coupe, transferring a deed is not just about handing over keys. The building board requires proof that the new owner has the liquid assets to pay the monthly maintenance fees, which in my building ran upwards of $4,000 a month. The clause stated that for the deed transfer to be finalized immediately, the transferee, which was Tyler, had to provide a certified bank statement showing a minimum balance of $500,000 in liquid cash. I knew Tyler didn't have $500,000. I knew he didn't have $500. I knew his bank account was currently overdrawn because I had seen the alerts on the family shared plan before I canceled it. So the trap was simple. Tyler wanted the penthouse now. Jasmine wanted to move in before the weekend. If Tyler admitted he didn't have the money, the deal would be delayed for months pending a board review, or worse, canceled. He would look like a failure in front of his wife and my father right at the moment of his greatest triumph. His ego wouldn't allow that. He had to prove he was the big-shot investor he claimed to be. I sat in Olivia's office sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the email inbox. We had sent the request for the document at 9 in the morning, marking it as urgent final step for key release. "He is not going to do it," Olivia said, tapping her pen against the desk. "He is arrogant, Sophia, but he is not stupid. He knows we will check." "You are giving him too much credit," I replied, staring at the screen. "He has spent his whole life lying to people who love him. He thinks lying is a magic trick. He thinks if he makes the document look pretty enough, the reality will bend to match it. He doesn't understand that in the corporate world, we don't operate on faith. We operate on verification. At 11:45, the notification chimed. New email from Tyler Brooks. Subject financials as requested. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I leaned in as Olivia clicked the mouse to open the attachment. It was a PDF file labeled Chase Private Client Statement July.pdf. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The document looked professional at first glance. It had the blue Chase logo in the corner. It had Tyler's name and the address of the garage apartment. And right there in the summary box was a checking account balance of $542,000.63. He did it, I whispered. He actually did it. Olivia didn't celebrate. She went into forensic mode. She zoomed in on the document. Look at the font, she said, pointing to the numbers. The body text is in Arial, but the numbers in the balance column are in Helvetica. They are slightly different weights. She scrolled down to the transaction history. And look here, she continued. The dates are misaligned. The spacing between the lines varies by a millimeter. This isn't a generated statement. This is a Photoshop job. A bad one. I looked closer. She was right. He had likely taken an old statement, maybe one he found online or a template, and pasted his own numbers over it. He had created $500,000 out of thin air to defraud a legal firm and obtain a multi-million-dollar property. But a bad Photoshop job wasn't a crime until we proved it was fake. Call the bank, I said. Verify it. Olivia picked up the phone. She dialed the number for the verification department at Chase. Because the document claimed to be a proof of funds for a real estate transaction, we had the legal right to verify its authenticity with the issuing institution. I listened to her side of the conversation. Yes, this is Olivia Sterling representing SB Holdings. We have received a proof of funds document from a Mr. Tyler Brooks, account ending in 4598. We need to verify the current balance matches the submitted statement for a closing today. She paused, listening. She frowned. She asked the person on the other end to repeat themselves. Are you sure, she asked? $0 and -42 cents, and the account status closed for overdraft. Thank you. Yes. Please send that confirmation in writing immediately. She hung up the phone and looked at me. Her eyes were wide. It is a complete fabrication, she said. The account number exists, but it has been closed for 3 weeks. He didn't just exaggerate his wealth. He created a fraudulent financial instrument and used wire communications, the email, to send it across state lines with the intent to defraud. I sat back in my chair feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and triumph. Sorrow because, despite everything, Tyler was family by marriage. He was the father of my niece or nephew. But triumph because he had just handed me the sword to cut the head off the snake. He didn't just commit fraud, I said, my voice steady. He committed wire fraud. That is a federal offense. And because he submitted this to a law firm to obtain property valued over $1 million, it is grand larceny by extortion and fraud. Olivia began typing furiously. I am drafting the affidavit now. We have the email metadata. We have the fake PDF. We have the confirmation from the bank that the money does not exist. We have everything we need to go to the FBI. I walked over to the window. I looked out at the city below, the same city where Tyler was probably right now telling Jasmine that the keys were on their way. He was probably popping another bottle of champagne, thinking he had outsmarted the system. He had no idea that he had just signed his own arrest warrant. I pulled out my phone. I had one more call to make before we went to the authorities. I needed to make sure the stage was set. Olivia stopped typing. The phone on her desk rang. It was the internal line from the reception. Ms. Sterling, the receptionist, said, her voice audible through the speakerphone. Mr. Tyler Brooks is here. He says he is here to pick up the keys. He is demanding to see you. I looked at Olivia. A cold smile spread across my face. He is here in the building. Yes, the receptionist said. He is in the lobby. He is quite loud. Let him up, I said. Olivia looked at me. Sophia, are you sure we should call the police now? No, I said. Not yet. Let him come up. Let him hold the keys. Let him think he has won. I want to see the look in his eyes when the elevator doors open, but not for him to leave. I checked my watch. It was 1 in the afternoon. Tell the receptionist to send him to the main conference room, I instructed. And Olivia, yes, call the federal field office. Tell them we have a suspect in custody for a priority 1 bank fraud case involving a major real estate transaction. Tell them to bring handcuffs. Olivia nodded and picked up the receiver. I smoothed my skirt and walked toward the conference room. The bait had been taken, the hook was set. Now it was time to reel him in. The main conference room at Sterling and Partners was designed to intimidate. It was a glass-walled fortress suspended 40 stories above the chaos of Manhattan, with a view that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table, my back to the skyline, watching my family file in. They looked triumphant. They looked like lottery winners who had already spent the jackpot before the check cleared. My father Marcus walked in first, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the glass door. He had his chest puffed out, strutting with the renewed confidence of a man who believed he was about to become a silent partner in a multi-million-dollar holding company. Behind him came my mother Linda, wearing a dress I had bought her 3 Christmases ago, looking nervous but hopeful. And then came the stars of the show, Tyler and Jasmine. Jasmine waddled in, clutching her stomach with one hand and Tyler's arm with the other. She looked tired, her eyes puffy from the nights spent in the garage, but there was a smugness to her smile. She looked at me then at the empty chair at the head of the table next to mine, and sat down as if she were ascending a throne. Tyler, however, was the one I was watching. He was vibrating with energy. He carried a leather briefcase that I knew was empty, a prop for the role he was playing. The billionaire investor, the tycoon, the fraud. "Welcome back," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. "I assume you are ready to finalize the transfer." "You assume correctly," Sophia Tyler said, tossing the briefcase onto the table with a heavy thud. "We have packed our bags. We are ready for the keys. I trust the concierge has been notified of our arrival." I looked at Olivia, who was sitting to my right. She gave a barely perceptible nod. The trap was primed. The legal team had prepared the digital presentation, and the door to the adjoining room where 2 federal agents were currently drinking coffee was slightly ajar. "Everything is in order," I said. "But before I countersign the deed transfer and release the $2 million in funds, there is a standard disclosure procedure we must go through. Due diligence." Tyler rolled his eyes. He checked his watch, a flashy gold timepiece that was likely a replica. "Come on, Sophia. We signed your affidavits. We gave you the bank statement. What more do you need? Just sign the paper and let us get on with our lives. It is for your protection as much as mine," I said, picking up a remote control. "As new shareholders in SB Holdings, you have a right to know the full financial picture, and as the incoming owner of the Penthouse, Tyler, I want to make sure you are fully aware of the liabilities you are taking on." My father leaned forward. "Liabilities? What liabilities?" "The building is paid off." I pressed a button on the remote. The heavy blackout shades on the windows slowly descended, plunging the room into a dim, cinematic twilight. A large projection screen descended from the ceiling with a low hum. "I am not talking about building liabilities, Dad," I said. "I am talking about personal ones." The screen flickered to life. The first image was not a spreadsheet or a legal document. It was a photograph, high resolution, taken 3 days ago by Vance's team. It showed Tyler sitting at a table at a rooftop bar in Soho. He was laughing, his head thrown back. Sitting across from him, leaning in intimately, was Kayla. She was wearing a white sundress and holding a champagne flute. Her hand was resting on Tyler's forearm. The silence in the room was instant and suffocating. Jasmine stared at the screen. She blinked once, twice, as if her brain refused to process the visual information. "Who is that?" Jasmine whispered. Her voice was small, trembling. Tyler froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a wax figure. He stood up, knocking his chair back. "What is this?" Tyler shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "This is This is a client meeting. You are spying on me. You are invading my privacy. I pressed the button again. The image changed. This time it was a close-up. Tyler and Kayla standing outside a jewelry store. He was fastening a necklace around her neck. He was kissing her on the cheek. A client, I asked calmly. Do you usually buy your clients diamond pendants, Tyler? Do you usually kiss your clients? Jasmine let out a sound that I will never forget. It wasn't a scream. It was a low, guttural whimper, the sound of a heart breaking in real time. She turned to her husband, her eyes wide with horror. Tyler, she choked out. You told me you were at a networking event that night. You told me you were working late for us. I am, baby. I was, Tyler stammered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Sophia is manipulating this. These are deepfakes AI generated. She is trying to ruin us. I pressed the button again. The next image was the receipt. The one from Hermes, $32,000. And next to it, the photo from Kayla's Instagram showing the orange box and the bag. The caption was blown up for everyone to see. My baby treats me like a queen. Jasmine stared at the bag she had begged for, the bag she had cried about. That is the Birkin, she whispered. That is the Togo leather Birkin. You said we couldn't afford it. You said we had to save for the nursery. I didn't buy that, Tyler yelled, looking around the room frantically. That is an investment piece. I bought it to flip it for profit. I spoke up then, my voice cutting through his panic. You bought it with the American Express card I gave Jasmine for emergency baby supplies, Tyler. You spent $30,000 of my money meant for your unborn child on a woman you have been seeing for 6 months. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Marcus, did you know about this? My father looked stunned. He was staring at Tyler with a mixture of confusion and dawning anger. No, I didn't know. Tyler, you said you were working on the business. I am. Tyler screamed, his voice cracking. This is a setup. I am not done, I said. I clicked the remote again. The images of the affair vanished, replaced by a complex flowchart of bank transactions. You wanted to know about the business, Dad, I asked. Here it is. Infinite Horizons, Consulting. I used a laser pointer to trace the red lines on the screen. Here is the $4,000 a month I sent you and Mom for 10 years. Here is where you transferred it to Jasmine to help them out. And here is where Jasmine deposited it into the joint account she shares with Tyler. I moved the dot to the final destination. And here is where Tyler transferred it to a private account in the Cayman Islands under the name Kayla Miller. My father stood up slowly. He looked at the screen, reading the numbers. He saw his pension checks. He saw the money he had borrowed from his friends. He saw the entirety of the family's wealth drained away into the account of a 22-year-old fitness influencer. You stole it, my father whispered. He looked at Tyler. You didn't invest it. You stole it. You told me we were building a crypto portfolio. You told me the market was down. The market isn't down, Marcus, I said. The market is blonde and lives in a luxury apartment in Soho that you are paying for. Tyler looked at my father, then at Jasmine. He saw the walls closing in. His arrogance evaporated, replaced by the cornered animal instinct I had seen in the glass bathroom. He turned on Jasmine. This is your fault, he shouted, pointing at my pregnant sister. If you weren't so needy, if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere. Do you think I want to live in a garage with your parents? I deserve better than this. I deserve a woman who appreciates me. Jasmine recoiled as if he had slapped her. She wrapped her arms around her belly, sobbing openly now. My mother rushed to her side, hugging her, glaring at Tyler with hatred. You monster, my mother hissed. After everything we did for you, after we took your side against Sophia? Tyler laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. You took my side because you are greedy. You are all greedy. You wanted Sophia's money just as much as I did. Don't act like you are saints. I just had the guts to go for it. He grabbed his briefcase. I am leaving, he announced. The deal is off. I don't want your penthouse. I don't want your crazy family. I am done. He turned and marched toward the door. Sit down, Tyler, I said. I haven't shown the last slide. I am not sitting down. I am walking out of here, and if you try to stop me, I will sue you for unlawful imprisonment. He reached for the door handle. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen displayed the PDF he had emailed us. The Chase bank statement showing $500,000. And next to it, the official letter from Chase Bank, confirming the account was closed and had a negative balance. Tyler stopped. His hand hovered over the door handle. He stared at the screen. He knew what that document meant. You submitted this document to my legal team at 11:45 this morning, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. You claimed it was proof of funds to close a real estate transaction valued at $3.2 million. So what? Tyler spat, though he didn't turn around. It is just a piece of paper, I exaggerated. Everyone does it. In the state of New York, I continued reading from a file Olivia had opened. Submitting a forged financial instrument to obtain property is grand larceny in the second degree. But because you emailed it, Tyler, across state lines, it is also wire fraud. Tyler turned around slowly. His face was gray. You wouldn't, he stammered. I am family. I am the father of your nephew. I stood up. I walked to the end of the table. You ceased to be family the moment you convinced my father to slap me. You ceased to be family when you let my sister sleep in a garage while you bought designer bags for your mistress. And you certainly ceased to be family when you tried to steal my home. I looked at Jasmine. She was watching me, her eyes red, her face streaked with tears. She didn't ask me to stop. She didn't beg for him. She just looked at the man she had married, finally seeing him for the first time. I looked at my father. He was slumped in his chair, a broken man who realized he had bet on the wrong horse. I nodded to Olivia. Do it. Olivia pressed a button on her intercom. Send them in. The door behind Tyler, the one he was about to open, swung inward before he could touch it. Two men in dark suits stepped into the room. They were not building security. They wore the distinct blue windbreakers of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Behind them were two uniformed NYPD officers. Tyler stumbled back, tripping over his own feet. Whoa, wait! Hold on, Mr. Tyler Brooks, the lead agent asked, his voice booming in the silent room. No, wait, let me explain. Tyler pleaded, raising his hands. It was a prank. It was just a negotiation tactic. You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and attempted grand larceny. The agent continued, grabbing Tyler's wrist and spinning him around. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Click, click, click. Jasmine screamed then. It was a sound of pure anguish. My mother buried Jasmine's face in her shoulders so she wouldn't have to watch. My father stood up, his fists clenched. Take him away, he whispered. Take the son of a bitch away. Tyler began to struggle. I didn't do it. She set me up. Sophia set me up. Look at her. She is the evil one, Jasmine, tell them. Tell them I love you. The officers didn't listen. They dragged him toward the door. As he passed me, Tyler looked into my eyes. He expected to see triumph. He expected to see me smiling. But I wasn't smiling. I was looking at him with the cold indifference of a crisis manager who had just successfully cleaned up a spill. Goodbye, Tyler, I said softly. The agents hauled him out into the hallway. The entire office staff was watching through the glass walls. I saw my colleagues standing up, phones out, recording the man who had tried to destroy my reputation being dragged away in chains. The door closed. The room fell silent again, save for the sound of Jasmine's sobbing and the hum of the projector fan. I turned back to the table. The screen was still displaying the fake bank statement. I looked at my parents. They were staring at me with a mixture of fear and awe. They had come here to strip me of my assets. Instead, they had been stripped of their delusions. I sat back down and folded my hands. Now, I said, looking at the wreckage of my family. About that $50,000 I offered. My father looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. The offer is rescinded, I said. Cliffhanger. I stood up and walked toward the door where Tyler had just exited. But I am not done with you yet. There is one more person who needs to answer for what happened in that garage. I looked directly at my mother. Get in the car. We are going to the hospital. And you are going to tell the doctors exactly how you got that bruise on your hip. The silence that followed Tyler's exit was heavy, the kind of silence that usually hangs in the air after a gunshot. The conference room, once a battlefield of egos, now felt like a tomb. My mother Linda was weeping softly into her hands, her shoulders shaking with the realization that her son-in-law, the man she had championed over me, was a federal criminal. Jasmine sat frozen, staring at the empty doorway, her hand resting absently on her baby bump, her face a mask of absolute shock. But my father Marcus was already trying to pivot. He was a survivor, a cockroach who believed he could talk his way out of a nuclear blast. He stood up, adjusting his suit jacket, smoothing out the wrinkles as if he hadn't just witnessed a felony arrest. He looked at me not with remorse, but with a desperate, calculating glint in his eyes. Well, he said, clearing his throat. That was unfortunate. I had no idea Tyler was involved in such things. You did the right thing, Sophia. We cannot have that kind of dishonesty in the family. He actually thought he could distance himself. He thought he could cut Tyler loose and still walk away with his dignity intact. He walked toward me, putting on his best fatherly smile, the one he used when he wanted to borrow money. I suppose this changes things regarding the penthouse. He continued, his voice regaining some of its old bluster. Since Tyler is out of the picture, we should probably put the deed in my name, for safekeeping, to ensure Jasmine and the baby are provided for. I will manage the assets. You know I have always been good with numbers. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had slapped me, the man who had gambled away my college fund, the man who had just watched his son-in-law get dragged away in chains and saw it not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity to cut out the middleman. You are good with numbers, Dad, I said, my voice quiet. Especially the numbers you think no one is watching. Before he could respond, the heavy oak door to the conference room opened again. It wasn't the receptionist. It was the same lead FBI agent who had taken Tyler away. He walked back into the room, his face grim, holding a new folder. 2 officers stood behind him, blocking the exit. My father frowned. Is there a problem, officer? We are just finishing up some family business. If you need a statement about Tyler, my lawyer will contact you. He gestured vaguely at Olivia, assuming she would jump to his defense. Olivia didn't move. She didn't even look at him. She was busy typing on her laptop, finalizing the destruction of his world. Mr. Marcus Brooks, the agent said, stepping fully into the room. We are not here for a statement. My father laughed, a nervous, stuttering sound. Then what can I do for you? We have a second warrant, the agent said. He held up the paper. Based on the testimony provided by Mr. Tyler Brooks in the hallway just now and corroborated by the financial records provided by your daughter's legal team, you are under arrest. My father's face went slack. Under arrest? For what I didn't do? Anything. Tyler is the crook. Tyler is certainly a crook. The agent agreed, closing the distance between them. But he was very eager to explain where he learned his techniques. And he was very eager to explain the nature of the transactions between his accounts and yours. The agent looked at the file in his hand. We have evidence of structuring money laundering and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. It appears that for the last 3 years, you have been funneling your gambling winnings and losses through Tyler's consulting firm to hide them from the IRS. You used his shell company to wash over $200,000 of unreported income. That is a lie, my father shouted, backing away until his legs hit the edge of the conference table. Tyler is lying to save his own skin. We have the bank transfers, Marcus, I said, speaking for the first time. I didn't look at him. I looked at the screen where the flowchart was still displayed. I showed the agents everything. I showed them how you moved the money I gave you into Tyler's account, and how he moved it back to you as consulting fees. You weren't just a victim of his theft, you were his partner. My mother let out a wail that pierced the room. Marcus, is this true? You told me you stopped gambling. You told me you were going to Bible study. My father spun around, his eyes wild. Linda, shut up. Don't listen to her. They are framing me. The agents didn't let him finish. They moved in with practiced efficiency. One of them grabbed my father's arm, twisting it behind his back. The other kicked his legs apart. Marcus Brooks, you have the right to remain silent. The agent recited the words echoing off the glass walls. My father struggled. He was a proud man, a man who demanded respect from everyone he met, and now he was being bent over a conference table like a common criminal. Get your hands off me, he screamed, his voice cracking. I am a deacon. I am a pillar of this community. You can't do this, Sophia. Tell them who I am. I stood up slowly. I walked over to where he was being cuffed. I looked into his eyes, seeing the fear and the rage swirling together. I already told them who you are, Dad, I said softly. I told them exactly who you are. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was final. It was the sound of a lifetime of lies collapsing under their own weight. They hauled him up. My father, the man who had ruled our household with an iron fist, looked small. His suit was rumpled. His comb-over had fallen out of place. He looked at me, pleading now. Sophia, please. I am your father. Don't let them take me. I will die in prison. I didn't answer. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. As they marched him toward the door, he passed Jasmine. She was still sitting in her chair, tears streaming down her face, her hand clutching her stomach. Daddy, she whispered. My father didn't look at her. He couldn't bear to see the reflection of his own failure in the eyes of his golden child. He kept his head down as they dragged him out into the hallway, past the staring eyes of my employees, past the life he had tried to steal, and into the waiting elevator. The doors closed, and he was gone. The room was silent again, but this time the silence was broken by the sound of my mother's breathing. It was ragged, shallow, bordering on hyperventilation. She looked around the empty room, her eyes darting from the screen to the door to me. She had walked in here with a husband and a son-in-law, ready to celebrate a victory. She was leaving with nothing. We have to go, Linda whispered, standing up on shaky legs. We have to call a lawyer. We have to get him out. She reached for Jasmine's arm. Come on, baby. Get up. We have to go. Jasmine didn't move. She was gripping the edge of the mahogany table so hard her knuckles were white. Her face had gone a terrifying shade of gray. Mom, Jasmine gasped. What is it? Come on, we need to leave, my mother urged, pulling on her arm. No, Mom, Jasmine groaned, doubling over. It hurts. My mother stopped. She looked down at her daughter. Jasmine's breathing was coming in short, sharp gasps. Sweat was pouring down her forehead, ruining her perfect makeup. Is it the baby? My mother asked, panic rising in her voice. Is it contractions? Something is wrong. Jasmine cried out, a high, thin sound of pure terror. It feels like something ripped. And then I saw it. A dark stain spreading across the beige fabric of the chair beneath her. It wasn't water. It was blood. My stomach dropped. I was angry at them. I despised what they had done, but I was not a monster. Olivia, I shouted. Call 911 now. Jasmine let out a scream that curdled my blood. She slid out of the chair, collapsing onto the expensive carpet of the conference room. My mother fell to her knees beside her, screaming for help. My baby Jasmine shrieked, clutching her stomach. Save my baby. The next few minutes were a blur of chaos. I was on my knees beside them, checking Jasmine's pulse, trying to keep her calm. My crisis management training kicked in, pushing aside the family drama. I grabbed a throw pillow from the sofa and put it under her head. Breathe, Jasmine, I commanded. Look at me, breathe. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. Sophia, She whimpered. I am sorry, I am so sorry. Don't let me die. You are not going to die, I said, though looking at the amount of blood I wasn't sure. The paramedics arrived in under 6 minutes. They burst into the room with a stretcher, pushing me and my mother aside. They worked quickly, shouting medical terms to each other. Placental abruption, fetal distress, dropping heart rate. We have to move her now, one paramedic shouted. She needs an emergency C-section immediately. They loaded her onto the stretcher. My mother was sobbing, holding Jasmine's hand as they ran toward the elevators. I followed them, my heart racing. We reached the lobby just as the ambulance pulled up to the glass doors. The lights were flashing red and white, reflecting off the wet pavement. They loaded Jasmine into the back. My mother tried to climb in with her. Ma'am, only one passenger, the paramedic said. My mother scrambled in, sitting on the bench next to the stretcher. She looked back at me, standing on the sidewalk in my suit, the wind whipping my hair around my face. Sophia, my mother screamed. Come with us. We need you. I shook my head. I couldn't go. I had to stay. I had to deal with the FBI. I had to deal with the press. Go, I said. I will follow you. The doors slammed shut. The siren wailed a mournful, piercing sound that cut through the city noise. I watched the ambulance speed away, disappearing into the traffic of Manhattan. I stood there for a moment, the adrenaline fading, leaving me cold and empty. I pulled out my phone to call a car service to take me to the hospital. And then I remembered. I stopped. My finger hovered over the screen. I had canceled the insurance. I had canceled it publicly in the church 2 days ago. I had canceled the Platinum Family plan that covered everything, including out-of-network emergency surgery and private rooms. Jasmine didn't have insurance. Tyler didn't have insurance. My parents didn't have insurance. And Tyler had just admitted to the FBI that he was broke. My father's assets were about to be frozen by the federal government as part of the money laundering investigation. They were heading to one of the most expensive hospitals in New York City for emergency surgery that would cost tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds. And they didn't have a dime. I looked at the ambulance disappearing in the distance. My mother was in there, thinking that the nightmare was over, thinking that at least the medical system would save them. She didn't realize that the real nightmare was just beginning. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from my mother. Please bring your credit card. They are asking for insurance information. We don't have it. I stared at the message. I looked at the glass doors of my office building where my reflection stared back at me. I was the crisis manager. I fixed things. I paid the bills. I made the problems go away. But this wasn't my problem. Not anymore. I turned off my phone. I put it in my pocket. And I turned around and walked back into the lobby. Let them figure out how to pay for the miracle. I had already paid enough. The phone on my desk vibrated against the glass surface, a buzzing insect demanding attention in the silence of my empty office. I knew who it was before I looked. It was my mother. I had ignored her previous attempts, but the text message about the insurance had been a grim reality check. I picked up the phone not out of compassion, but because I knew that if I did not answer, the hospital billing department would be the next to call, and I could not have my credit score impacted by their insolvency. I answered without saying a word. All I heard on the other end was the chaotic background noise of a hospital waiting room and my mother's ragged breathing. Sophia, she sobbed, her voice sounding small and terrified. They are saying they won't admit her to the private wing. They are saying without a down payment, they are going to transfer her to the county hospital. You know the county hospital, Sophia. It is overcrowded. It is dirty. You cannot let your sister give birth there. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the view of the city I had conquered. The county hospital was indeed underfunded and chaotic, but it was where thousands of people gave birth every year. It was good enough for the general public, but apparently not good enough for Jasmine, even though Jasmine currently had a net worth of 0. It sounds like a difficult situation, I said, my voice flat. Please, my mother begged. It is $20,000 just for the admission and the emergency surgery deposit. We do not have it. Your father. They took his wallet when they arrested him. Tyler. Tyler is gone. You are the only one left. I am not the only one left. I corrected her. I am simply the only one with money. There is a difference. There was a silence on the line, broken only by a sharp announcement over the hospital intercom. I will be there in 20 minutes, I said, and hung up before she could thank me. I did not rush. I gathered my purse, checked my makeup in the reflection of my computer screen, and walked out of the building with the measured pace of a woman who owns her time. The drive to Mount Sinai was uneventful. I watched the city pass by, feeling a strange detachment. A week ago, this crisis would have sent me into a panic. I would have been desperate to save them, to fix it, to be the hero. Now I felt like an insurance adjuster arriving at the scene of a total loss. When I walked into the hospital lobby, I spotted my mother immediately. She was sitting on a plastic chair near the admissions desk, looking older than I had ever seen her. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her makeup was smeared, and she was holding her purse with a white-knuckled grip. When she saw me, she practically launched herself across the room. Sophia. Thank God she reached out to hug me, but I stepped aside. Her arms fell to her sides and she looked at me with wounded eyes. I did not care. I walked past her to the billing counter, where a tired-looking woman was typing on a computer. I am here for Jasmine Brooks, I said, placing my Black American Express card on the counter. I understand there is an outstanding balance for admission. The woman looked up, relieved to see someone who looked like they could actually pay. Yes, ma'am. We need $25,000 to process the emergency C-section and the NICU hold. Run it, I said. I heard the machine whir. I watched the receipt print. I signed my name with a flourish. It was a transaction, nothing more. I was buying closure. My mother stood behind me, wringing her hands. Thank you, Sophia. I knew you wouldn't abandon us. I knew you still loved your sister. I turned to her, handing her the receipt. This is not love, Linda, I said, my voice low so the receptionist wouldn't hear. This is severance. This is the final payment on a debt I never owed. Do not ask me for another cent. Not for the recovery room. Not for the baby clothes. Not for a ride home. My mother flinched, but she nodded. She was too desperate to argue. Is she out of surgery? I asked. She is in recovery, my mother said. The baby. It is a boy. He is in the nursery. I nodded. Take me to him. We walked through the sterile hallways in silence. My mother tried to make small talk, mentioning how beautiful the hospital was, trying to normalize the situation, but I did not respond. We reached the nursery viewing window. There were rows of plastic bassinets, but my mother pointed to one in the front. He was tiny, wrapped in a generic hospital blanket, a small knitted hat covering his head. He was sleeping, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. He looked peaceful. He looked innocent. He has Tyler's nose, my mother whispered, a note of sadness in her voice. I looked at the baby. He did not know that his father was sitting in a federal holding cell. He did not know that his grandfather was being processed for money laundering. He did not know that his mother was homeless. He was a blank slate, untainted by the greed and dysfunction that ran through our bloodline like a disease. I felt a pang of sorrow for him. He was entering a world where love was conditional and manipulation was a love language. He is innocent, I said softly, touching the glass. Yes, my mother agreed. Tearing up, he is an angel. We will raise him right, Sophia. We will make sure he knows his aunt saved him. I turned to look at my mother. My expression hardened. Do not use him as a pawn, Mom. What she asked, blinking. Do not use this child to guilt me back into your life, I said, my voice sharp. And do not let him grow up to be another Jasmine. Do not teach him that the world owes him a living. Do not teach him that manipulation is a skill. Because if you do, if you poison him with the same toxicity you raised us with, he will end up exactly where his father is. My mother looked shocked. I would never. You already did, I cut her off. You created Jasmine. You created a monster who shoved her own mother for a bowl of pasta. This baby deserves better than you. I turned away from the window. I had seen enough. Where is Jasmine? I asked. She is in room 402. My mother said, her voice trembling. She is waking up. She has been asking for you. I walked to room 402. The door was open. Inside, Jasmine looked small and pale in the hospital bed. Monitors beeped rhythmically beside her. She looked broken, stripped of her arrogance and her malice. When she saw me enter, her eyes filled with tears. Sophia, she croaked, her voice hoarse from the anesthesia. I walked to the side of the bed. I did not take her hand. I stood there looking down at her. Is the baby okay? She asked. The baby is fine, I said. I just saw him. And Tyler, she asked, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting him to walk in. Did he come back? Did he fix it? I almost laughed. The delusion was still there, clinging to her like a fever. Tyler is not coming back, Jasmine, I said brutally. Tyler is in federal custody. He is facing charges of wire fraud, bank fraud, and grand larceny. He is looking at 10 to 20 years in prison. Jasmine let out a sob. But he said he was doing it for us. He said he was an investor. He is a con artist, I said. And you were his mark. He spent your money on a mistress. He stole from our parents. And he left you alone to face the consequences. Jasmine shook her head, tears streaming into her ears. And Dad? Where is Dad? Dad is in the cell next to him, I said. Money laundering, conspiracy. Jasmine stared at the ceiling, the reality of her life crashing down on her. She had no husband, she had no father, she had no home. What am I going to do? She whispered. Sophia, what am I going to do? I have nowhere to go. I have a baby, please. I am sorry. I am so sorry for everything. Just let me come to the penthouse. Just for a few weeks. Until I get on my feet. I looked at her. I saw the sister I used to play with in the backyard. I saw the girl I used to protect from bullies. But then I saw the woman who had smirked while our father slapped me. I saw the woman who had demanded my home because she felt entitled to it. I leaned in close. You are not coming to the penthouse, I said clearly. You are not coming to my office. You are not coming to my life. But I am your sister, she wailed. You were my sister when it was convenient for you, I said. When you needed money. When you needed a scapegoat. But when I needed respect, you were a stranger. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small envelope. I placed it on the bedside table. Inside is the receipt for your medical bills, I said. They are paid in full. Consider it a divorce settlement from this family. Sophia. Please. Jasmine tried to reach for me, but she was too weak to lift her arm. Don't leave me here alone. I straightened up. I adjusted my jacket. You are not alone, Jasmine, I said. You have your mother. And you have your son. You finally have exactly what you wanted. You are the center of attention. You are the priority. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, the sound of her crying turned into a high-pitched panic. Sophia. Come back. I can't do this. I don't have any money. How am I going to feed him? I stopped in the doorway. I did not look back. You will figure it out, I said, just like I had to. I walked out of the room and down the long, sterile hallway. I passed my mother, who was sitting on a bench, head in her hands. She looked up as I passed, opening her mouth to speak, but I kept walking. I walked past the nurse's station. I walked past the security guard. I walked out the automatic doors and into the humid New York night. The air felt thick, but to me it tasted like oxygen. It tasted like freedom. I hailed a cab, gave the driver the address of my favorite wine bar, and leaned back in the seat. My phone buzzed again. It was another text from Jasmine, then one from my mother, then a call from an unknown number, probably a lawyer for my father. I looked at the phone for a long moment. Then I opened the settings. I selected the option to change my number. It would be a hassle to update my business contacts, but it was a small price to pay. I pressed confirm. The signal bars went gray. The phone went silent. I was ghost. I was free. And for the first time in my life, the silence wasn't lonely. It was victorious. It has been 6 months since I walked out of Mount Sinai Hospital into the humid New York night. 6 months of silence, 6 months of peace. In my world, the seasons have changed from the suffocating heat of summer to the crisp, clean air of winter. I have spent these months rebuilding my internal landscape, replacing the chaos of my family with the order of a life designed solely by me. I changed my phone number. I sold the penthouse in Tribeca, not because I had to, but because I wanted to purge the memory of Tyler trapping himself in my bathroom. I moved to a quiet, historic brownstone in Brooklyn, a place where no one knows my name, and where the mailbox never contains a summons or a demand for money. But while my life has expanded, theirs has contracted, until it fits into the smallest, darkest corners of reality. I do not speak to them, but the public record speaks volumes. I did not need to hire a private investigator to find out what happened to the Brooks dynasty. I only had to read the court dockets and the local newspapers. Tyler was the first domino to fall completely. His trial was swift and brutal. The federal prosecutors did not care about his charm or his fake tearful apologies. They only cared about the wire fraud and the bank fraud. I did not attend the sentencing, but Olivia went on my behalf. She told me that when the judge read the verdict, Tyler did not look like a mastermind. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar, only to realize the jar was full of scorpions. 5 years. That was the sentence. 5 years in a federal correctional institution for defrauding a financial institution and attempting to extort a family member. He was ordered to pay restitution money he will never have, ensuring that even when he gets out, he will be shackled by debt for the rest of his life. Olivia said he wept as they led him away. He looked back at the gallery, searching for Jasmine, searching for someone to save him. But the gallery was empty. Jasmine did not go. She couldn't afford the bus fare to the courthouse. My father Marcus avoided prison, but only barely. His age and his lack of prior convictions allowed his lawyer to plea bargain down to 5 years of strict probation. But the mercy of the court did not extend to his wallet. The IRS is a creditor that never forgives. They seized his pension. They seized the remaining equity in the car. They garnished his Social Security checks to pay back the taxes he had evaded on the gambling winnings he laundered through Tyler. The deacon, the man who used to strut through the church aisles demanding respect, is now a man who has to ask a probation officer for permission to leave the county. He lost his position in the church. The congregation he thought he owned turned their backs on him the moment the scandal broke. There is no loneliness quite like the loneliness of a fallen moral arbiter. He sits in a rented room now, stripping copper wire from discarded electronics to make ends meet, a task he used to sneer at when he saw others doing it. But the cruelest, most poetic justice was reserved for Jasmine. My sister, the golden child, the girl who believed manual labor was beneath her, is now the face of customer service at a discount grocery chain 3 towns over. She lives in a subsidized housing complex, a stark gray building that smells of boiled cabbage and despair. It is a far cry from the nursery she wanted to build in my penthouse. I know this because a former colleague of mine, someone who didn't know the full extent of the drama, happened to see her. She told me the story with a mix of horror and pity. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The store was busy. Jasmine was working register 4, wearing a polyester vest that was 2 sizes too big for her. She looked tired. Her hair, once perfectly highlighted and styled, was pulled back in a messy bun. Her nails, which used to be manicured weekly, were short and chipped. She was scanning items with a robotic, dead-eyed efficiency. Beep, beep, beep. Then she froze. Standing in her line holding a basket of organic kale, imported cheese, and expensive wine were 2 women, Tiffany and Courtney. They were Jasmine's old brunch friends. The girls she used to sip mimosas with. The girls she used to complain to about how difficult it was to find good help. Jasmine tried to look down. She tried to hide behind the register screen. She prayed to a god she hadn't spoken to in months that they wouldn't notice her. But of course they did. "Oh my God," Courtney said, her voice carrying over the noise of the store. "Jasmine, is that you?" Jasmine had to look up. Her face burned a deep, humiliating crimson. "Yes. Hi, Courtney. Hi, Tiffany." The two women stared at her. They looked at the name tag pinned to her vest. They looked at the scanner in her hand. They didn't look angry. They looked amused. "Wow," Tiffany said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "We heard things were rough after Tyler got arrested, but we didn't realize they were this rough." "Good for you, though. Honest work, right?" Jasmine tried to scan their items quickly, her hands shaking. She fumbled with the bottle of wine, nearly dropping it. "Careful," Courtney said, laughing lightly. "That bottle costs more than your shift. I am just helping out." Jasmine lied, her voice trembling. "Just for the holidays. You know, to keep busy. The baby is with a nanny." Tiffany leaned in, swiping her credit card. "A nanny, really?" "Because I heard you were on the waiting list for state childcare." "No shame in it, sweetie. We all have to survive somehow." They took their receipt. They took their expensive bags. And as they walked away, they didn't wait until they were out of earshot to start laughing. "Did you see her hair?" Courtney whispered loudly. "I know," Tiffany replied. "Karma really is a bitch, isn't it?" Jasmine stood there watching them leave. The line behind her was growing. A customer cleared his throat. "Hey, lady, are you gonna scan my milk or just stand there?" The man grunted. Jasmine wiped a tear from her cheek with the back of her hand. She took a deep breath, swallowing the scream that was rising in her throat. She looked at the milk. She looked at the scanner. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "Scanning it now." She was no longer the princess. She was the help. She was the person she used to treat like garbage, and every beep of the scanner was a reminder of the life she had thrown away. Back in the small, cramped apartment, my mother Linda spends her days trying to rewrite history. She tells the neighbors that I am away on business in Europe. She tells herself that this is all a misunderstanding. She cannot accept that her choices led here. She clings to the hope that if she can just say the right words, if she can just find the right scripture, the magical ATM that is her eldest daughter will reopen. Last week on my birthday, she tried one last time. She sat at her wobbly kitchen table and wrote a letter. She didn't have money for a card, so she wrote it on lined notebook paper. I can imagine the content. It was likely a mix of guilt-tripping religious manipulation and a plea for money disguised as a desire for reconciliation. She probably wrote about how much the baby looks like me. She probably wrote about how much my father misses me. She probably wrote that family is forever. She put it in an envelope. She used her last stamp. She addressed it to my old penthouse in Tribeca, the only address she knew. She walked to the mailbox in the rain, dropping it in the slot with a prayer. She went home and waited. She waited for the phone to ring. She waited for the miracle. But miracles don't happen for people who refuse to repent. Yesterday, the letter came back to her. I can see her standing in the hallway of her building holding the battered envelope. The ink was smeared from the rain. Across the front, stamped in harsh red ink by the postal service, were words that cut deeper than any knife. "Return to sender. Recipient not found. Unable to forward." She stared at the stamp. She stared at my name crossed out by a machine. Recipient not found. It wasn't just a postal error. It was the truth. The Sophia she knew, the Sophia she used, the Sophia she abused, did not exist anymore. That woman had died in the conference room the day she chose herself. My mother slumped against the wall, sliding down until she hit the dirty floor. She held the letter to her chest and wept. She realized then, in the cold silence of the hallway, that she hadn't just lost an address. She had lost her daughter. And no amount of stamps, no amount of prayers, and no amount of tears would ever bring me back. I was gone, and I had taken my light with me, leaving them forever in the shadow of their own greed. I sold the Tribeca penthouse 3 weeks after the trial. My real estate agent called me crazy. She told me the market was up and that if I waited until spring, I could get another $500,000. I told her I didn't care about the money. I cared about the energy. Every time I walked past the guest bathroom, I saw the ghost of Tyler pressed against the glass. Every time I sat in the conference room of my own mind, I heard my father's voice demanding ownership. I needed to scrub the slate clean, not just with sage and prayer, but with a wire transfer and a moving truck. I bought a house in the Hamptons. It is not a fortress like the penthouse was. It is open. It sits on a dune overlooking the Atlantic, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the light instead of blocking out the city. The air here smells of salt and wild roses, not exhaust and ambition. For the first time in my life, I do not lock my bedroom door at night. I do not sleep with my phone under my pillow. Tonight is the first time I'm opening the doors to guests. But this guest list is different. There is no blood obligation here. There are no deacons, no jealous sisters, no parents looking for a handout. I stand on the deck watching them arrive. There is Olivia, my lawyer, who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. She is wearing a sundress instead of a suit, holding a bottle of vintage wine. There is Vance, the private investigator, looking uncomfortable but happy in a linen shirt. There are my friends from college, the ones who offered me their couches when I was building my business, the ones who never asked for a dime when I made it big. This is my family, the family I chose. The family earned not by DNA but by loyalty. I walk down to greet them. There is laughter, real laughter. Not the sharp cutting laughter of my sister mocking my clothes, or the performative laughter of my father trying to impress a client. This is the sound of people who actually like each other. We sit around a long wooden table on the patio as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. The food is simple: grilled fish, fresh salads, bread broken by hand. No one is fighting for the head of the table. No one is calculating the cost of the wine. Olivia raises a glass to me. "To new beginnings," she says. I look at her, and then I look out at the ocean. I think about my mother sitting in her small apartment, waiting for a letter that will never come. I think about Jasmine scanning groceries, feet aching, learning the hard way what $1 is actually worth. I think about Tyler marking days off a calendar in a concrete cell. For a long time, I thought revenge was a weapon. I thought it was something you wielded to inflict pain, to balance the scales of justice with suffering. I thought I would feel a surge of joy knowing they were miserable. But looking at the faces around this table, I realize I was wrong. Revenge is not their destruction. They destroyed themselves. They were bombs waiting to detonate. I just stopped trying to defuse them. True revenge is this. It is the peace in my chest that hasn't tightened in 6 months. It is the ability to look at my bank account and know exactly where every cent is going. It is the freedom to wake up on a Sunday morning and not dread the phone ringing. Revenge is not caring enough to hate them anymore. It is indifference. It is the realization that I do not need their validation to be whole. I never did. I stand up holding my glass of white wine. The condensation is cool against my fingertips. The wind catches my hair, blowing it back from my face. I feel lighter than I have ever felt in 32 years. The heavy cloak of the Brooks family legacy has been shed, left behind on the pavement outside a hospital in Manhattan. I look at my friends. I look at my life. It is not perfect. I have scars. I have trust issues I am still working through, but it is mine. Every shingle on this roof, every blade of grass in this garden, every dollar in my account, and every person at this table is here because I chose them. To family, I say softly, the real kind. Everyone raises their glasses. To family. I take a sip. The wine is crisp and cold. I smile, and for the first time it reaches my eyes. I turn to look at the sunset one last time. The sun disappears completely, slipping into the water, taking the day with it. But I am not afraid of the dark. I have my own light now. And as the screen of my life fades to black, I am not waiting for the credits to roll. I am just getting started. This journey taught me that family is defined by loyalty, not biology. For years, I measured my worth by how much I sacrificed for people who only saw me as an asset. I learned the hard way that you cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. Cutting ties wasn't an act of cruelty, it was an act of survival. True freedom is having the emotional autonomy to say no without guilt. If you are holding on to toxic relationships out of obligation, let this be your sign to choose yourself. Hit like if you believe in the power of self-respect, and subscribe for more stories of resilience. What is the hardest boundary you've ever had to set? Tell me in the comments below.